Back at it with a recap and discussion of Season 2, Episode 7 of Power Book 3, Raising Kanan, No Love Lost. So something I'm liking with this show is that from the first to second season, there are these little threads that you think might have been dropped, have been settled, but then they pop back up later on. It's like, if you think of the game Whack-A-Mole, right? By the time you hit one problem, you think you solved it, another problem pops up. But then it's like, oh, that problem you thought you got rid of, no, that's still in play as well too. And so it's like, you have to pay attention to the things that happen because seemingly small things will pop up later on. And so it's a lot of stuff just brewing right below the surface, right? Problems or potential problems for RAQ and the rest of the crew. Usually I begin rolling with RAQ, but things would make more sense for this episode starting with Kanan. So Kanan's at home and remembers the gun that he'd gotten from Pedo Mom. You might call her Palomar, but I'm calling her Pedo Mom. And so he decides to return the gun to her. This woman is just highly inappropriate. When he arrived, she's in her robe. I thought it was lingerie at first, but she's wearing like just underwear underneath. Now my thing would be, if you go to the door, you realize that it's Kanan, fine, you're at home, innocent enough. I would think that either you stop him there at the door, ask him what he needs, take the gun from him, and that would be the end of it. But in this case, she invites him in, takes the gun from him, and it's like when he's ready to leave, she's like prolonging the thing. She's at home, so she has the right to be wearing what she's wearing. But it's like when she lets him in, the robe is closed, and she actually takes her hand and opens it, like exposing her bra and all this kind of stuff. Kanan asks for, I think the girl's name is Kanan, like where she is, turns out she's not at home. So from there, here it is that you have this grown woman who's coming on to Kanan. Now, this kind of gives me pause because she's a grown woman. He's a teenage boy. And I do mean boy. He's not a man. Secondly, there was nothing about when they first met at Famous's party, like from the very beginning, that should have led to her taking such a deep interest in Kanan. It seemed like a random meeting, but her reaction towards him, her interest in him, it's like there's no real explanation for it. It's inappropriate to be a grown woman paying this kind of attention to this teenage boy. It makes me wonder, like, is there something deeper going on there? Like, is she trying to set him up or something like that? Because from the very beginning, when he opened the door at Famous's apartment, like she was just all smiley, and there's no reason for it. Initially, he tries to resist because he's been kind of talking to the daughter, Kanan, and he even made out with her, right? So obviously there's a conflict here, but like she just brushes it aside and he gives in, right? Like this is a woman, but that's a boy, and the whole situation is just gross. Later on, Kanan and Symphony meet up. It turns out that actually Symphony reached out to Kanan. The reason being that he's received a job offer down in Charlotte, North Carolina. Sounds like a good opportunity for him, and he pretty much just wanted to say goodbye to Kanan. So Kanan is fine with it. He wishes him well, but he broaches the topic that, he knows that Symphony and RAQ aren't really dealing with each other like that anymore, right? He doesn't sound upset, but more like he's accepted it, but he wouldn't have had a problem if it was otherwise. Symphony explains that he thinks it's for the best that, him and RAQ just be friends rather than being romantically involved. With that, Kanan asks, well, are you planning to tell your friend? Meaning, are you planning to tell RAQ? Because obviously he doesn't want any parts of that. And so it kind of opens up a pathway or a reason now for RAQ and Symphony to meet up once again. I doubt whether anyone knows the details of their last parting, like when they were at the house. It sounds like for all intents and purposes, she's respected his wishes and left him alone, right? But telling Kanan was a way, as Kanan mentions, of Symphony kind of indirectly hoping that she'd find out without him having to tell her. So with that, Burke actually stops Symphony, and she has no real reason to stop him, but she starts questioning him. The line of questions becomes like really clear she's interested in information about Kanan, right? Symphony ends up shutting down the conversation, and she's asked all these questions about like Kanan and his dad and the night Howard got shot and whatnot. And it's this thing of Kanan being smart and stupid at the same time, right? Later on, he meets back up. We see him laid up with Pedo Mom, and, they've had a session, I guess, and in walks the daughter, Kanan. This whole situation is just gross on multiple fronts. You have a grown woman sleeping with this underage boy, and then secondly, he was just recently dealing with her daughter. If Kanan was grown, I would say that he was nasty too. But Kanan is a young boy, and this is a grown woman who's manipulating him. The mom is weird, but cold-blooded towards the daughter. Like, she's twisted, nasty. I don't get the sense that RAQ, as a grown woman, regardless of her faults, would be pursuing some young boy like this, or like would be into some mess like this, dealing with some guy and his dad or his son. From the very beginning, when this woman popped up on screen and she's like all smiley with Kanan and taking inappropriate interest in him as a grown woman, it's like, I didn't like her then. I like her even less now. I kind of see her as being, to a degree, like the female version of Cartier. This kind of sickeningly sweet persona that you just know masks a really nasty interior. I hope that RAQ finds out and gets her up out of there. I do not like this woman at all. She's gross. She's nasty. RAQ is once again out on what appears to be one of these quasi-dates with Cartier Farid. Firstly, I doubt this man's name is Cartier Farid. His real name is probably like some basic business like James Williams or Robert Jones. It's just constantly fronting. Anyway, they're out to dinner at the Russian tea room. It's unclear what the bottom of RAQ's outfit looks like, but up top, her titty meat is all on display. RAQ has been dressing quite differently since her and Symphony broke up, if I might add. Not that I have a problem with it. I don't think RAQ is checking for Cartier like that. At least I hope she isn't. But this also doesn't seem like a regular business dinner. I'm still not really understanding what exactly the nature of this relationship is, or at least from RAQ's perspective. So an associate of Cartier's named Tremont walks in. They exchange pleasantries literally, but it devolves into them kind of throwing jabs at each other. Turns out this is the guy who takes care of distribution for Cartier down in Maryland. There's a little bit of tension in their interaction. I think in part, Cartier is showing off for RAQ, but also because there's some discomfort in their relationship, as Farid regards Tremont as being like an underling rather than a partner or an equal. RAQ instigates things a little bit once the guy walks off, poking at Cartier's ego. It makes sense that she's entertaining Cartier because he can offer a path into Maryland and DC, right? Places she's interested in expanding to. But he already has someone in place to handle distribution in those areas, right? So RAQ might be potentially looking at this as an opportunity to kind of further sow discontent between the two of them and create an opportunity for herself, like a pathway in. Farid and Tremont were due to meet later, so RAQ hangs around in the lobby of the hotel and intercepts Tremont as he's leaving. His face is all banged up and whatnot. Obviously, he's just met with Farid, and this is the thing that I didn't trust about Cartier from the beginning. He puts across a somewhat civilized front, but like we saw last episode, when he like slapped that guy for no reason, it was really just a flex for RAQ. He's a street dude. He's an incredibly violent man. Never mind this persona that he's attempting to portray. It's like he tries way too hard. He's fake, which is why I don't like him. It's like I said, he's smarmy, right? Untrustworthy. And this was part of my concern for RAQ potentially entertaining this guy romantically. Like, he's beating up these people. If him and RAQ end up together, give it time, he'll be physically violent with her too. But thankfully, I don't believe that RAQ is romantically interested in this guy. I think she sees him as a business opportunity. But given his comfort with using violence, I could see him being a potential problem for RAQ. She created drama between them so she could now approach this guy to handle distribution for her in Maryland. So she pitches Tremont on her idea. He doesn't really know who she is, but obviously, you know, he's going to ask about, and she has faith that he's going to come and try to like see about her, try to get down with her. RAQ has plans to expand, but the issue is that each place so far that RAQ has chosen to go into or considered comes with some kind of drama. It's just drama, look there, more drama. And I'm here for all of it. So she has Queens unlocked for the most part. There's some lingering problems, but aside from Lulu and stuff with Howard, she doesn't really have any major issues, at least within her organization, to deal with. So instead, she's taken all of her problems and bundled them together in Jersey, which would be the Italians, and then the two problematic people in the persons of Laurel and Unique. So it's like, when she figures out how to deal with her problems there, she'll probably be able, or she'll try to handle all of them in one fell swoop. RAQ is still moving forward with the purchase of the house that she took Symphony to see, but the agent states that there's an HOA, you know, they have really strict requirements, so they're requiring further proof of income. She's buying the house cash, but that's to, you know, they want to make sure she'll be able to keep up with upkeep. And it's at this point that she tells them, you know, she has proof of income, she owns a record label. RAQ doesn't own a record label. Lou does, and he doesn't want her anywhere near it. Back in Queens, Symphony stops by to speak to RAQ, in part to tell her that he's leaving, but then also to let her know that Burke is asking questions about Kanan. I do find it telling that RAQ is usually a very cool customer. She handles herself very well. Nothing really shakes or scares her. But here we see that when Symphony rings the doorbell, right, as she's coming down the stairs, she looks through like this little window they have in the door and takes a pause before opening the door, right? She actually steps out of the line of sight from the door's window and stands by the wall to block herself from view, right? You can see her, like, she looks thrown off. It's obvious that RAQ still feels deeply for this man, which is why I've never bought this supposed interest in Cartier, right? Or romantic interest, because that's not the vibe that I'm getting there. Like, she's passionate, but not with him, right? There's interest probably on his part, but from her perspective, I don't see her looking at him or dealing with him in the same vein that she does Symphony. Symphony rattles her. It's not just that she pauses before opening the door, but you can see like she stops and has to gather herself. This is probably in part because of their last interaction, but even prior to that, we see the way that she interacts with him. Like, Symphony gives RAQ butterflies, right? When they do speak, he tells her he's moving for this job opportunity. She wishes him well. He does the same for her. It's clear at this point that, like, she's respected his wishes and has left him alone. He explains that moving for this job is an opportunity that he couldn't say no to, but she quips that he could say no if he wanted, as he said no to her many times. There's like an awkward pause and some unspoken things left unsaid between them, and they kind of let that matter drop. You know, he has said no to her on some occasions, right? Like, he stands up to her. He calls her out on manipulating him and directly asks her to stop, which she respects. He's like one of the few people, really the few men in her life who stand up to her. And I think part of that is that she likes him as a person, right? He's not angling for anything. He calls her out her nonsense and will put a stop to her attempts at manipulation, right? Which tends to play a role in most of her other relationships. Aside from Symphony, I think really the only person that deals with RAQ and doesn't want anything from her or vice versa or attempt to manipulate her would be Jukebox. Because even with like Marvin and Lou, it's like they have business dealings together. So that complicates things. There's always an angle there. And it's now also become the case with Kanan. On the whole, Jukebox and Symphony are like the only ones that deal with RAQ, accept her as she is, and in like a straightforward way. And so with that, you see how open and loving and affectionate she is towards them. Not to say she doesn't do wrong by them, but for the most part, she just likes to love on them. We don't see RAQ interact with very many females, but Symphony is the only man in her life that she has such a relationship with. She had that relationship with Kanan at one point, but now him getting older and different factors, it's complicated things, and that's changed. But it's like, when Symphony explains to her that Burke is asking questions about Kanan, you notice the shift in her tone and demeanor towards him, right? Once again, she becomes kind of sharp with him. Up to this point, Burke has kind of been poking around, not so much in RAQ's business, but more in Howard's business. Howard, I think to some degree, has become aware, right? Because his girlfriend told him, right? But now RAQ is aware that Burke is poking around, and unbeknownst to Burke, that's a problem for her. RAQ and Howard have another one of their late night meetings, and unfortunately it comes to light that Scrap's mom is visiting the station trying to get them to open an investigation into his death. Now, if you remember, his death was ruled a suicide, but she doesn't believe it. It turns out that Scrappy was not the informant. It was actually his mom. Scrappy was a little bit shady looking in the situation, but he had remained loyal. And actually, Jukebox laid across his path with Howard as he's stopping by Nicole's house to speak to her parents to ask them some questions about Burke. So it's like the two of them don't trust each other. She's investigating him. He's investigating her. It's like nobody trusts anybody on this show. The thing that annoyed me about Howard is how flippant he was about telling RAQ, right? Labeling someone as a snitch in that role is a big deal. Unbeknownst to Howard, RAQ personally killed Scrappy. With her brothers being uncomfortable with it, she can't really tell them because they're already looking at her crazy. We see RAQ sitting outside of Symphony's house. Now, me personally, when he told her to leave him alone, I was silently hoping that like RAQ would preserve some dignity and not be the crazy ex-girlfriend sitting outside this man's house. And God forbid he got a girlfriend, right? She's done me proud until this moment, right? She's there, I guess, for non-romantic reasons. I guess that's fine. But Howard planted the bug in her ear that Symphony knows too much. And she's staring at this man intently. In the preview clips, it's obvious that she's doing a drive-by, but I thought it was Burke. But here we see it's actually Symphony. When I tell you I was stressed because I thought she was going to kill him. So we see her start the car, turn off the headlights, and she's driving down the street ever so slowly. You can see she's been sitting there for a minute, like looking at him. She picks up the gun, points it out the window at him, and I was sitting there like, homegirl, please don't make me hate you. You've messed up. You made some mistakes along the way, but for the most part, I've still been rolling with RAQ. But here is, if you kill Symphony, that's it. We're done. I held my breath when she pointed the gun at Symphony, but fortunately, this is the only person that she hesitates to kill. And I was happy with that. Stupid Howard put it in her head that Symphony's a liability. He's a garbage cop, as he has been since the first season. And especially after this stuff with Scrappy, she should stop listening to him. But that speaks to how much she cares about Symphony, right? She didn't give him a hard time about him breaking up with her or telling her not to contact him. She encouraged him to take this position in Charlotte. And I think she was genuine when she said she only wants good things for him. With her being in his life, it's like you see the danger that it presents for her, but then also indirectly the danger that it can put him in, right? I think like she doesn't want anything bad to happen to him. She doesn't even like claim him as her boyfriend to Howard, right? In this case, she wants to try, but like at the last minute, she just can't do it. And so she puts the gun down and continues driving. It's a glimpse into the RAQ that you saw from last season. And that's the complex and conflicted RAQ that I liked. Howard telling her that Scrappy was not a snitch. You actually see her pause, right? Like you can see the regret in her face in that moment. Here now with the situation with Symphony, she shows some heart, right? She does care. Though I will say that Howard could be doing all of this to lay a trap for RAQ in return for her trying to have him murdered. Like he's actually shady. I'm curious to see from here what happens to Palomar, for messing around with RAQ's son. Her and her son were about the age of 15, 16 years old, had been coerced into these inappropriate relationships with older people. Her with Howard and then Kanan with Pedo Mom. Kanan wasn't really paying Pedo Mom any mind. She's the one that came on to him, seeking him out. And I believe that might have also been the case with Howard. Jukebox. So the show actually starts off with Jukebox out at the cemetery visiting Nicole's grave. She has a pretty decent conversation with Nicole's dad, and it turns out that he never really seemed to have much of a problem with Jukebox, or even Jukebox and Nicole being together. He didn't seem nearly as angry as the mom, and he certainly doesn't blame Jukebox for what happened. The next time we see Jukebox, she's at, it seems like Bible study or something like that with Kenya. It's like part of her building this relationship with Kenya. She's kind of becoming more immersed in Kenya's world. But this relationship seems to be very much about Kenya and Kenya's interests. It's Kenya taking her to pick out clothes. It's her going to church with Kenya. It's her kind of shaping and molding herself into Kenya's world. We don't really see that coming back the next way. Kenya trying to understand Jukebox, trying to relate to her through the things that she enjoys and she's interested in. They're at Bible study, and the guy who's leading the meeting begins speaking about relationships, right? Leviticus, adultery, and homosexuality is touched upon. And we see Jukebox's reaction to it, which I think it's pretty obvious at this point that Kenya doesn't know that Jukebox is a lesbian. There's this young boy at the church, which Jukebox had met previously, who's interested in her. We actually see her sit up and take notice when they begin discussing homosexuality. Here it is, she's sitting in the church, and basically they're talking about her, or rather people like her. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. It's not that I dislike the character of Kenya, but I don't like her for Jukebox. I don't see that relationship as being positive for Jukebox. I don't have faith that it's going to work out positively, just based on what we've seen so far. Where it's so far, this relationship has required Jukebox to make the effort, to go looking for Kenya, to change her appearance to suit Kenya. Now you have them in church talking about homosexuality, which is something that most likely she's going to have to hide from Kenya. It's just, I feel like Jukebox is giving too much. In this relationship, it's not enough is coming back. She's having to change too much of herself to try to make this thing work. So under the watchful eye of Kenya, Jukebox gives her number to the young boy. I don't remember his name, right? But I don't know why she's even entertaining this kid, right? But we see Kenya approves of her talking to this young man. And it's girl, don't even waste your time talking to this boy. You are not interested in him. Take your time to grieve and then just find another girlfriend. Marvin. We see Marvin meeting up with the young Italian guy. unbeknownst to him, this is the guy that Unique helped out in prison, right? He needs someone else to go to Scarsdale to handle Tony for him. Now, why of all people he reached out to this guy is unclear. I don't know what grounds he would have for trusting him. It's like you already have issues with the Italians. They attempted to kill RAQ. You have this uneasy truce with them. Why would you appeal to him of all people? Doesn't make sense to me. In addition to that, it seems like the case with Tony had gone away. So is there really a need for you to go out of your way to get rid of her? Like, you've accepted a plea deal, they dropped the other charges. Why are you still bothering with her? It seems like it's probably less about business and more about Marvin's feelings being hurt or him being upset that she tried to get him in trouble. You've avoided a potential drug charge, but now here it is that you're going to end up possibly having to deal with, you could end up having to deal with a murder charge. And at that, you're bringing in someone else to take care of this that you don't even know. It just seems like you're opening yourself up to potential problems. And it seems at this point, it's not even really warranted. There's a different way that you could have gone about dealing with this. Or really, there's no reason for you to continue even dealing with this. Marvin goes looking for RAQ at her house. And instead he finds Jukebox, right? I thought he was going to use this as an opportunity for them to talk and work out this situation, for him to apologize and whatnot. But instead, he starts asking her about Kenya, as far as when she was going to tell him about Kenya. Granted, she's not even talking to you. So I think his expectations were a little bit high. You know, it's within your rights to divorce your wife or husband, break up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, right? But you don't leave your kids. That's not acceptable. So I understood him being upset about that. This woman was selfish, dropped you as a child, didn't look back. And for her to now be back in the picture, that gives him pause. I think that's completely understandable. He made some valid points, which I think RAQ did as well, which is that Kenya seems to be out for self. But Jukebox points out that Marvin has also made mistakes, which is valid, right? His interaction with her at the end of last season was insane. And so she does have a valid point. But he points out that he's been there for her, you know? Now, granted, I think there's some conversation to be had there, as to some degree he was neglectful of her as well. I thought it was a missed opportunity to not take advantage of the two of them being alone, to sincerely apologize to Jukebox, to pretty much tell her what he told RAQ or even Lou in the previous episodes. He's spoken to just about everyone else, you know, admitted to recognizing his wrongs, but he hasn't had the chance to speak to Jukebox in that way, partly because she keeps shutting him down. But I think in this moment where you had an opportunity in that she didn't walk away, he could have made his point about Kenya, but it should have been more important to talk to her about their relationship, to try to repair their relationship. And it's at this point that the Italian kid shows up to carry out the hit for Marvin. Unfortunately, things go wrong. He ends up getting killed. Tony is killed, but the husband is left alive, right? So this is the Italian mob boss's son. He gets killed in the house and doesn't manage to escape. The other guy gets shot in the process. And so later on we see he's like laying on a roof or something like that, bleeding out. It's unclear if he's gonna die or is just seriously injured, right? Later on we see that Tony's husband is, in a hospital bed speaking to the police, right? I would assume that most likely Marvin took this upon himself without talking to RAQ about it first. It made absolutely no sense. Like, he's been doing so well this season. And now to turn around and do this just as he's completing his anger management class, it's like things are looking up for him, headed in the positive direction in other areas. You know, with regards to the anger management class, the teacher congratulates him. She gives him her number. It's like, the moment things start looking up, they quickly start turning down. And I just see things being terrible for him from here on out. Lou is now messing around with the new artist, Zisa. And in the midst of their canoodling, in walks two henchmen on behalf of an individual named Linton Manley, whose name could only be more Jamaican if it was Donovan. Turns out that Crown borrowed money from this individual and put the studio up as collateral, right? With Lou having killed him, obviously Crown probably hasn't been making payments or they haven't heard from him, so this is now a potential problem for Lou. How their relationship came about is that Crown was borrowing money all over the place and owing people all over the place. So it's like, without him, as we now see, not really having a full understanding of the exact financial situation of the business, Lou has created some problems for himself. Up to this point, we've already seen he's had to go to RAQ to borrow money, which means that apparently his personal funds are tapped out. Like, he doesn't have money. The label isn't making any money as yet. There are these outstanding debts that exist, some of which he knows nothing about. The situation is bad, but Lou doesn't even realize just how bad it is because he doesn't have a full understanding of the business. Marvin shows up at one of the projects, right, and sees that they've got fiends like loitering in the hallway, waiting because they've halted business. Marvin initially thinks it's because they're counting the money, but actually it's that Lou is taking the money that they have on hand before it's even been counted. He's got like a passive aggressive kind of problem with RAQ. And this is the thing I've been saying throughout the episodes. If you want to go legit, fine, talk to RAQ, make a clean break, go and do your other business. But it can't be that you want to continue getting money from this illegal business while not being involved. It's either you're in or you're out. And it's going to just lead to further drama between him and RAQ. Marvin doesn't do anything to him in the moment. He tries to talk to him, right? Tries to make him listen that, like, look, we need to have a count as far as how much money you're taking. To just grab money and take it before it's been counted, that's not okay. As a result of the ongoing drama with Crown, here it is. He's now stolen money from the business, right? Really, he's embezzled money from his family business. And I don't know if it's that he just didn't have a chance to get the money to the guy or whatever it is, but the henchmen now return with a third person and they pretty much jump Lou. Lou is in trouble and needs help, right? He needs a huge infusion of cash. I don't understand what he did with the money that he took out of the business. Like, I don't understand why he didn't have money to begin with. And then, like, he had to go to RAQ. But here he chooses not to go talk to her, right? You're already in a bad place with her. You've borrowed money from her before. You've now taken money out of the business. I don't really understand why you wouldn't just go back to her, clean up the situation. It goes back to last season where he was talking to Jukebox about having people do favors for you. That is just a way of putting yourself under someone's thumb. He should know better than anyone else because that's exactly how he ended up being involved in Crown's business. Crown borrowed money from him to handle his expenses, and Lou used that as an opportunity to muscle in on the record label. Lou now pretty much finds himself in the same position where he's taken over Crown's business, but he's also taken over Crown's debts, just going from bad to worse. He meets up with Cartier and asks him for help. And as Cartier points out, someone else's misfortune can be an opportunity for you. Lou now wants to borrow money from Cartier, so it's like he's technically into RAQ for money. He's into this guy Linton for money. And he's now trying to borrow money from Cartier to pay Linton. That help is not coming for free. Cartier is asking for half of Crown's share, so let's assume that the business is split 50-50 between him and Crown. Lou is trying to do like what Crown wanted to do, which is repay the loan through royalties, but Cartier wants equity. With that, he's going to find himself in Crown's position. He was just recently putting hands on Crown, even going so far as to kill him. And now we see that these people that Crown owes money to, they're putting hands on him, beating him up and all this kind of stuff, right? So he's also physically now Crown. That's not a good position to be in. It's like you owe way too many people money. And instead of you trying to find a permanent solution to your problem to get you out from under everyone's thumb, it's like you're just going to keep finding new people to borrow money from, just creating more problems for yourself. That's going to become an issue in the long run. As is, RAQ already sees herself as having part ownership in this label. Now you have Cartier in the mix as well, or RAQ is going to angle to get control of this label. Cartier is now in the mix. Cartier's guy is going to likely end up doing business with RAQ, which is then going to bring problems between her and Cartier. They say you can't serve two masters, and especially with these two, you're going to end up eventually having some serious problems. Later, we see that Lou is in the studio with Zisa, right? She's in the booth while him and Cartier are sitting at the control panel. Lou does not look pleased at all, but Cartier is loving it. So they're recording. He's got problems with RAQ. He's now going to have problems with Cartier. And Cartier implied that he was going to be an investor, right? Stated that he's going to be a silent partner. But here we see him at the control panel. He's not going to be any kind of a silent partner. right? We've already seen him on 2 occasions be very violent with people that he does business with. And because of that, I feel like Lou made a bad judgment call in going to Cartier instead of going to RAQ. Because I think that regardless of whatever between them, unless he seriously violated, I don't think RAQ would really kill him. Whereas I think that Cartier, at the least provocation, certainly wouldn't hesitate. He's not winning any HR awards. He's not particularly loyal to his people, and he doesn't treat them very well. Immediately upon seeing Cartier, I didn't like him. He has this persona that he presents of being this nice, let me help you out kind of guy. But deep down inside, he's an incredibly violent and ignorant person. He puts on this veneer of genteel, but that's not at all the situation. Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, and check out my Rolling with RAQ playlist. Go ahead and click that thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and share it on social media as well.